She walked into that press room carrying a loss on her record and walked out carrying the entire sport on her shoulders. What Alex Eala said at the Roland Garros press conference didn't just turn heads, it cracked the foundation of a system that has silenced players for decades. And the most powerful people in tennis, they had absolutely nothing to say back. Stay locked in, because by the time this story is finished, you will never look at Alex Eala the same way again.
Unfortunately, no. I think I did see her practice from afar and I did watch a couple points, but I had already finished practicing that day and I was leaving the next day for another tournament. So I wasn't able to, time that interaction, but I would have loved to hit with her while she was there. But I think she had a great time. Yes, definitely. There are so many things that you can take away from both of those players, and it's you have to pick and choose. You really have to pick and choose what you're gonna take from them, because it's. I mean, you see me and you see Rafa, he's just like a machine. You can't be, I personally can't be like there and running here, running there, hit a winner like this. But there are definitely certain things that I've seen in their games that I can implement more in mine. Yeah.
There is a version of this story where Alex Eala never makes it to Roland Garros, where a girl from Manila, Philippines, a country that had never once placed a woman on the grandest clay stage in tennis history, stays home, watches from a screen, and dreams about a world she cannot touch. That version of the story is comfortable, safe, forgettable. This is not that version, because Alexandra Eala did not arrive at Roland Garros 2026 as a tourist.
I, well, of course, I have also gone through the different stages, no, and I think all of the players here in Roland Garros or in the Grand Slams have gone through the different stages of competing in the futures and then competing in, and I think we all just want to leave tennis better than we found it, and I think that's why the top 10 players are doing this, and I really appreciate and I admire that they're standing up for everyone. Basically, I think they, being at the top of the game, they represent a lot. They represent the players, so I appreciate that. And I think that, well, me personally, I think for my view, I think there's so many factors that I don't know how Roland Garros is run. I don't know the specifics and I don't know the finances especially, but I do think I am on the player side and I will always be on the player side. I think we really need to appreciate the hard work that we go through, and I think I know the work that needs to be put in to get at this level. So I really appreciate what the top 10 are doing. Yeah.
Before her first-round match against Emiliana Arango at the 2025 French Open, Eala stepped in front of journalists and said something that should have been replayed on every sports channel on the planet. Being the only Filipino on this stage, I'm representing our country and our people. Being the first is a big deal because it gives other people courage to follow the same path. Read that again. Sit with it. She wasn't talking about tennis tactics. She wasn't analyzing serve percentages or clay court geometry. She was speaking directly to every child in a country of 115 million people who had been told quietly and repeatedly by the world's silence that they did not belong in this conversation. By 2026, Eala had climbed to world number 35. Her win-loss record stood at 41-26 across her remarkable age 20 season alone. She had reached the quarterfinals in Dubai, back-to-back round of 16 finishes in Indian Wells and Miami, all WTA 1000 events, the tier just below Grand Slams. She had beaten players ranked inside the top 10. She had shown unmistakably that her Miami breakthrough was not a fluke, it was a declaration. But Roland Garros 2026 handed her a brutal draw. Iva Jovic, seeded 17th, one of the most dangerous young players on tour, and, by extraordinary coincidence, one of Eala's closest friends on the entire circuit. Two rising stars, two futures colliding on court 14 in Paris, and only one path forward. Jovic won, 6-4, 6-2. Eala's Roland Garros campaign ended before it found its rhythm. For most players, that would be the story. Pack the bags, reflect quietly, fly home. For Alex Eala, the real story had not yet begun. Good, because what happened next in that press room changed the entire conversation around tennis, and nobody saw it coming. Before a single ball was struck at Roland Garros 2026, the tournament was burning. Not from the sun blazing over Philippe Chatrier, not from any on-court rivalry or shocking upset. The fire consuming Paris that fortnight was political, financial, and absolutely furious. And it had been building inside the locker rooms of the most powerful players on the planet. The numbers were stark, brutal, impossible to ignore. Grand Slam tournaments, the 4 most watched, highest-grossing events in the sport, paid players just 14.9% of total tournament revenue in 2026. That figure had actually declined from 15.5% the previous year. Meanwhile, standard WTA and ATP Tour events paid out 22% of revenue to the athletes who made those events worth watching in the first place. The French Tennis Federation, which organizes Roland Garros, had offered a 9.5% increase in the raw prize money pool, bringing the total to 61.7 million euros. But raw numbers masked a devastating reality. The percentage share was shrinking while the tournament's commercial value exploded. Players felt cheated, and they said so, loudly, publicly, and with the unified force of almost every significant name in the sport. Aryna Sabalenka, the world #1, delivered the most electric statement of the pre-tournament period at the Italian Open. Her exact words detonated across every tennis platform simultaneously. I think at some point we will boycott it. I feel like that's going to be the only way to fight for our rights. I feel like the show is on us. Without us, there wouldn't be a tournament, and there wouldn't be that entertainment. Coco Gauff aligned herself firmly alongside Sabalenka. Elena Rybakina followed. Yannick Sinner, a man described by those inside the situation as deeply personally disrespected by the FST's decision to actually decrease the revenue percentage after promising progress, joined the movement with quiet but unmistakable conviction. The coordinated plan that emerged was surgical in its symbolism. On the traditional pre-tournament media day at Roland Garros, the sport's biggest names would walk into press conferences and walk straight back out after precisely 15 minutes. 15 minutes, representing the 15% revenue share they were receiving, not a single second more. Sabalenka sat down. 15 minutes, gone. Gauff appeared briefly, delivered her point, departed. Sinner followed. Swiatek participated. The message thundered through every press gallery in Roland Garros simultaneously. We are here, we are organized, and we are done being grateful for crumbs. The French Tennis Federation scrambled. Their spokesperson released a formal statement expressing regret over what they called an initiative that penalizes all stakeholders: the media, broadcasters, federation staff, and the entire tennis community. But the players weren't moved. Sources described inside those initial meetings confirmed that player representatives believed one day of coordinated action had accomplished more than an entire calendar year of private negotiations. Paris had never felt like this. The clay courts remained pristine, the traditions remained intact, but underneath every match, every draw ceremony, every handshake, a revolution was quietly assembling itself. And right in the middle of it all stood a 21-year-old from Manila who had just lost in the first round and was about to face the press. Here is what most people expected from Alex Eala's post-match press conference. Gracious defeat, reflection on the loss against Jovic, perhaps some emotional words about facing a close friend in competition, a few lines about the grass court season ahead. Standard, measured, professional. The kind of responses that fill sports archives without leaving any mark on the actual culture of the sport. What they got was something entirely different. Eala sat in front of those microphones and spoke about her match with the honesty and self-awareness that had already become her signature. She acknowledged her friend's superior performance with both clarity and class. I think there were a couple of things that Eva did better than me today, and I think that's where I see the differences between players at her ranking and players at my general level. I'm not saying I can't get there. I know what work needs to be done. That alone was compelling, refreshing even, in a world where post-match deflection has become an art form. Then came the question about the boycott. The journalist leaned forward, asked Eala directly, "Where do you stand on the prize money dispute? Do you support what the top players are doing?" The room shifted, because here was an interesting dynamic nobody had fully considered. The boycott conversation had been dominated almost entirely by top 10 voices, the players earning millions per season, the players whose single tournament appearance generated more revenue than most athletes see in entire careers. Asking Eala, ranked 35th, still establishing herself, still fighting for every ranking point, still at a stage where prize money genuinely determines whether a coaching team and a travel schedule remain financially viable, was asking someone with infinitely more authentic skin in this particular game. She didn't hesitate. I have also gone through the different stages, and I think all of the players here in Roland Garros, in the Grand Slams, have gone through the different stages of competing in the futures. Pause. Let that land. The futures circuit, the lowest professional tier in tennis, where players spend their own money flying between obscure venues, sometimes earning less from prize money than they spend reaching the tournament, where careers either survive through sheer financial sacrifice or quietly disappear before anyone notices. She continued, "I think we all just want to leave tennis better than we found it, and that's why the top 10 players are doing this. I really appreciate and admire that they're standing up for everyone, basically." Then she delivered the line that detonated across the internet within hours. "For me personally, in my view, there are so many factors. I don't know how Roland Garros is run, I don't know the specifics, and I don't know the finances especially, but I am on the player's side, and I will always be. We really need to appreciate the hard work that we go through, and I know the work that needs to be put in to get to this level, so I really appreciate what the top 10 players are doing." Simple sentences, devastating impact. Because what Eala articulated, quietly, without drama, without performing outrage for a camera, was the authentic emotional core of an argument that had risked becoming a billionaire's dispute. She reminded every single person in that room that this wasn't about Sabalenka's endorsement portfolio. It wasn't about adding zeros to Goff's tournament winnings. It was about every player who'd scraped through futures events on borrowed money, driven themselves between venues on no sleep, questioned whether the sport they sacrificed childhood for would ever genuinely take care of them. That is the statement that silenced the room. You still think this is just about prize money? Keep watching, because the next chapter reveals exactly why Eala's voice hit differently than anyone else's in that building. Imagine standing in a burning building and hearing two different people describe the fire. The first person stands outside, watching through bulletproof glass, wealthy, protected, genuinely concerned, but fundamentally untouched by the flames. Their description is accurate, their outrage is real, but they will never fully understand the heat. The second person stands inside the building, feeling every degree. Their words carry a different texture entirely, because survival, for them, is not theoretical. That is precisely the distinction Alex Eala created at Roland Garros 2026. Sabalenka's boycott threat was powerful because of her platform, her visibility, her ability to make a tournament organizer genuinely nervous about losing the world's top-ranked player from their draw. When Sabalenka says boycott, contracts tremble, sponsors pay attention, television networks make urgent phone calls. But Eala's endorsement of the movement carried a completely different authority, the authority of lived experience at every level of this broken system. She trained from age 13 at the Rafa Nadal Academy, balancing elite sports with full academic coursework. She competed through junior circuits, through futures events, through the grinding ITF calendar, where prize money often barely covered accommodation. She became the first woman from her country to reach a Grand Slam main draw, not because the system opened doors for her, but because she forced those doors open through sheer, relentless, documented excellence. She arrived at Roland Garros 2026 ranked 35th in the world, a ranking that sounds impressive until you understand how precarious that position genuinely is. Inside the top 35 means direct entry into Grand Slam draws. Outside means qualifying rounds. A few bad results, an injury, a rough tournament stretch, and suddenly the financial mathematics of professional tennis becomes suffocating. Players ranked outside the top 100 regularly operate at a net financial loss. Travel costs, coaching fees, accommodation, equipment. The expenses of being a professional tennis player are staggering. Prize money at that level rarely covers the overhead. Many talented athletes quietly retire, not because their ability disappears, but because sustaining the financial burden becomes genuinely impossible. Eala understood this reality not from statistics, but from personal proximity. She'd witnessed it, lived adjacent to it, feared it. Her words about going through the different stages weren't diplomatic freezing, they were autobiography. And that is precisely why the top players went speechless. Because Eala didn't need to side with them. She had every justification to stay cautiously neutral, protecting relationships with tournament organizers, managing her image carefully, prioritizing her own precarious position in a sport where the establishment holds enormous power over scheduling, wildcards, and opportunities. Silence would have been rational, strategic, utterly understandable. Instead, she chose clarity. She chose solidarity. She used a press conference, the same forum the top players had weaponized through a 15-minute walkout, to speak an inconvenient truth directly into the record. That kind of courage doesn't announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly, without fanfare, in a sentence that starts, "I don't know the specifics," and ends with, "I am on the player's side, and I will always be." Alex Eala arrived at Roland Garros 2026 as a first-round opponent. She departed as something the sport hadn't witnessed in years, a completely authentic voice speaking an uncomfortable truth at exactly the moment that truth needed saying. The trophies will come or they won't. Rankings fluctuate. Clay court records evolve. Technical improvements happen across entire seasons of patient, grinding development. But character, courage, the willingness to stand for something larger than personal comfort when the establishment is paying close attention, that reveals itself once, in a single moment, and everyone present understands immediately that they witnessed something permanent. Roland Garros 2026 gave us that moment, wrapped in a quiet press conference delivered by a girl from Manila who was never supposed to be there and absolutely refused to waste the opportunity of being exactly there. Was this simply one athlete supporting a movement, or the moment tennis found its most powerful future voice? Drop your answer in the comments. This conversation is far from finished. If this story moved you, if you believe athletes like Alex Eala deserve the platform to reshape their sport, hit subscribe. Every single story we tell here starts with someone refusing to stay quiet. Don't miss the next one.